Steve open it up.
All right.
We're all passing off who goes first.
Thank you for coming to GunCon 2024. I'm Steve, this is Zeke, and that's Caleb, and we're here to do the first ever live edition of Smythbusters. So welcome aboard.
All right,
so tell us about yourself.
I'm here and I'm drinking coffee.
That's a good answer.
If that's what you want to call it. Yeah, we'll call it, it's coffee. Thanks everyone for coming out. This is super weird not talking to a camera. There's actually like faces looking back, which is great.
Exactly.
So I'm going to go ahead and in Smythbuster fashion, I'm going to introduce the myth we're going to be talking about here.
I'm dying to find out what it is.
Yeah, he has no idea, allegedly. As always, as you know, traditional Brownells video studio fashion, none of this is scripted. We're just here having fun, and we made a Zeke sandwich. So Zeke's here with us. So we're going to be talking about gunsmithing and what is a gunsmith. The myth itself being that you have to have let's call it an associate's degree to be a gunsmith.
Oh boy.
Nope.
You sure about that? Because back when I was doing gunsmithing work, I often get asked what my credentials were to work on your firearm. So.
Yeah, and a lot of people get that a lot. Is my mic hotter than y'all's?
No, I feel like mine's super hot.
Gunsmithing traditionally, the word itself, let's talk about the etymology first. So you have gunsmithing. Smithing is creating parts by hand. And a lot of times hardly any gunsmiths actually sit there and hammer out a piece of metal to make a part for a gun anymore. You've got companies like Brownells out there where you can order any part you need for a gun, and you're more gun repairman by replacing parts that you order. It's still a necessary job. It's still a job that can be lucrative for somebody if you get good at it. But the actual smithing just doesn't exist anymore. What's your thought on it?
The hand fitting and all the polishing that's required. We got a lot of plug-in guns these days.
Yeah.
But if you think you're going to jump from a Glock into a 1911, that's a big jump. That goes from assembly to gunsmithing. And if you can get a 1911 together and make it run, I'd call you a gunsmith, actually.
So, Steve, you're a pretty well-known gunsmith. I would say you're the famous Steve Ostrom gunsmith.
Between us three, I'm very well known. Yeah.
Where'd you go to gunsmithing school?
I tell you what, I went into a shop and told him I wanted to try working there, and he said, fine, there's the milling machine, there's the lathe, there's a bench for you and a vise, get after it. And my tutorial on the milling machine was, you need to make this part, here's a piece of aluminum, figure it out. Good learning experience.
He's a good gunsmith, right?
He's good.
We could say he went to MGS if you want.
No, actually, it worked out great. After a couple of years, my boss was coming back asking me if we could do certain jobs. And I said, yeah, we can do that. I'll figure it out.
That's awesome. Yep. So, yeah, I can say I'm also a traditionally trained gunsmith. I started as a gunsmith apprentice when I got out of the military. I was working at the time, my wife and 2 kids. At the time, I now have 3, but I was making minimum wage apprenticing as a gunsmith, and it was rough, but that's what I wanted to do. I stuck with it, got good at it, and fortunately, now I make a little bit above minimum wage.
That's right. And you were in a good place to do it because in Louisiana, the guns get used hard.
Oh, listen.
So you got a lot of experience in a short time.
I did, especially with all the hurricanes. I restored a lot of flood guns, so got a lot of experience restoring old stuff. And the duck hunters, they were so hard on their shotguns and that brackish water, which is there's salt water. I mean, it was destroying those shotguns. Yeah. And duck hunters don't want to clean their shotguns, so they were always breaking. And so that made money fixing them.
Right.
And a lot of gunsmiths see this, especially when they're starting out, that there are people out there that'll buy the $10,000, $13,000 shotgun, spend $15,000 on a hunting rifle, but they don't clean their own gun. So even something as basic and rudimentary of cleaning your gun, gunsmithing, you can make a good living just cleaning guns.
My first year and a half as like a gunsmith apprentice, all I was doing was cleaning oils, just so I could get from it. Like they wanted me to be super familiar with the breakdown of these firearms before they were letting me like fit and change parts. So that's all I did for just about a year and a half. And that was a awesome way to learn. Just
it is.
Yeah.
It really is. I got tasked with that also, and one of my first jobs was taking apart an A5 Browning shotgun. And once I got that back together and working, he said, "You can handle anything. From now on, the gloves are off."
That was a rite of passage in the gunsmith shop.
A5?
Was taking apart a Browning Auto 5 and
How
putting
many
it
of
back
you guys
together.
have taken apart an A5?
Okay, there
Not
we go.
any fun the first time, is it?
How many people put it together wrong the first time?
Oh.
Oh,
and,
man.
and from the traditional learning of gunsmithing, there came gunsmithing schools. There's brick and mortars out there. There's distance learning. We're a distance learning school, and a lot of people will instantly go, how do you learn gunsmithing online? How do you learn at correspondence? Well, the best way to do that is hands-on. Just like an apprenticeship, you have to do it hands-on. So one thing I fought for with our school, and I'm a part owner, so I had some say in it, is getting those hands-on projects. So the first thing our students do is refinish an M1 Garand stock. It's all beat up, scratched up. They have to finish it, send it back to us. All the way to something as simple as soldering two pieces of metal together, which you hear that, and if anybody's ever soldered anything together before, you understand. But so many people get so angry at that task. They're like, this is crap. I can't learn anything. I can't make it work. Well, you got to do everything just right to solder those things together. It's not like soldering a motherboard where you just get a little piece of solder and the wire sticks. You know, you have to clean it. You have to get flux on it. You have to get everything right. And then making hand tools. So all those hands-on aspects are there with the correspondence version 2. And a lot of times with brick and mortar schools, not all of them, if anybody here has gone to a brick and mortar and yours wasn't like this, talk to me afterwards. But a lot of them are state-run schools. They don't want them learning modern weapons. You know, they're learning old lever actions and old shotguns, and that's about it. On some of them, not a lot of them, not all of them. So it's something where you have to get the education right and teach those concepts correctly for them to go out and do what they're doing.
Yeah, and so before we go on any further, because I'm going to continue to ramble, we don't have like a video editor to edit what's going on before you see it, so I do a lot of rambling. But before we do that anymore, I want to invite anyone who has any questions about Smythbusters, gunsmithing, Brownells, gunsmithing schools, hair product, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's microphones on either side. Feel free to walk up. We'll take your questions. But with that being said, we'll continue going. So let's talk about what actually the term gunsmith. Okay.
And the first 14 questions
Hey.
get an MGS cut.
All right.
And it's not just a plastic cup; it's aluminum, and it keeps things cold. Trust me.
Aluminium, if you're
Aluminium, yeah.
English or whatever. I don't.
So what is gunsmithing? We're gonna
Yeah, so
continue
what
that?
is so back in the day, if you were to jump in a time machine, go back, to 1939 when Bob Brownell founded the company, he would tell you that a gunsmith is anybody who worked on their own firearm.
Yeah, I would say that. First question.
Yes, sir.
My question is there any, what does a company have to go through to get their product into Brownells? Do they have to submit their product, have it looked at, have it gone over before it becomes a Brownells line?
Yes, excellent question. So we have a new product onboarding process with our product team, and you just basically talk to them, submit the product to them. They'll look over it and go from there. That's to be completely honest, that's as much as I know about the process. But I can if that's something you're interested in, I can definitely set you up with the right people.
The product does have to be in production, fully packaged, fully developed. They
Right.
usually
Yep.
insist on that.
Good point.
And I don't have any addition to that because I don't know.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you got it.
We've already got more lining up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's do this now.
right.
Yeah, it's great.
How much, as far as the video making that you two do during the week, how much is that part of your job?
That is so. I am so my official job title. What's my job title? See, it's
You're my boss.
So this is I get weird reactions
you
from
knew.
this. I am technically Steve's boss, which my entire job is just making sure he doesn't retire early. So that's what I do full time. I'm like, I gotta make Steve happy. But no, in all seriousness, that's our full time job. So we're in the studio all the time, and
Yeah.
when we're not filming studio, we're figuring out what questions need to be answered so that we can better help help, because we're all about education, right? We make it, it's a little bit entertaining, but it's all about free education. So, and we don't monetize on YouTube, so we don't make a penny off of our YouTube account.
I actually thought you were doing some gunsmithing at the same time.
Oh, okay, got you.
Sure.
So, we work on a lot of personal projects. We don't do any gunsmithing for the public. I mean, we work on stuff for buddies here and there, but
We reconfigure guns all the time to
Yeah.
appear in different videos with different product on them too.
there's
That
a bunch
itself
of
is a full-time job.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a bunch of guns in the studio that are torn apart. The gun benches in the studio, all the tools are actually functional, right? We actually use those. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's jump over to the
Over here.
left-hand side. Our left, your
So,
right.
first, so my name is Jonathan. I want to get into gunsmithing, but my question is for somebody, not necessarily just gunsmithing, but for somebody who wants to get into the industry, what are some tips that you guys can suggest? I've been kind of asking everybody that I can get, talk to, but in your personal opinion, what's some of the ways you think will be a good way to try to access the industry?
So I'm going to cheat. We had this conversation
Yeah, we
earlier,
did.
and I'm going to give everybody what I gave him. A little bit about my background. I got into the gun industry through a podcast. I started Talking Lead with my buddy Marty in Nashville, Tennessee. We grew that pretty big. And then I went to work for another school, which shall not be named. And then had a TV show, and now I'm with MGS and I have ownership in it. And the biggest thing that kept me going in the beginning, getting into this industry, is constant content. And I know content is something that gets thrown around in the business world a lot, but it's important. And I was telling him earlier, because he's looking to go to gunsmithing school and potentially coming to our school, and just your phone, this thing right here, I'm not going to pull it out of my pocket because my jeans are tight, but that phone is free marketing. You pick it up and go, hey, I'm working on a Glock 19 today, blah, 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 10 seconds, boom. You just marketed your company.
Yep.
Whether it's gunsmithing, whether it's a manufacturer, if you're a trainer, if you're an instructor, or even if you're not in the industry, that phone is free marketing to you. Get that content out. I know, is it okay if I share a little bit about you?
That's fine.
All right, so he has a little social anxiety, right? You're not talking directly to an audience like we are right now. You're talking to nobody but a screen. So you don't have to worry about that. The trolls are going to come. They're going to be mean. They're going to pick out, I don't like your gray shirt. Why are you wearing a gray shirt? Why is your hair cut the way it is? They're going to say that stuff. What's that?
I'm just giving him crap about it. I'm giving him crap about his great shirt.
So if you're wanting to break into working in the industry, that's a great way to do it. If you're already in the industry and you have a company, just get that content out. Just press record. That's the simplest way. It's free. It's easy. And if you start to build a following and you do good stuff, it's going to come out. Don't be embarrassed of that first time. Don't sit there and go, oh my God, I shouldn't have said it like that, and overthink it. Just put the info out there. That's the big.
Excellent. Yeah. So come get a cup.
Did I answer it good? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Would you
absolutely.
say that a gunsmith would be somebody who is a machinist that specializes in guns?
In many cases, yes. Steve, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I do a lot more metal work than woodwork. And if you can use a lathe and a milling machine, if you can weld, that's a real plus a lot of times. You can make any part you need if the price is right, So you can work on the rarer guns, the parts, the guns that parts aren't available for, things like that. It's really nice to have that luxury. But also, if you're a machinist, barreling up a 700 type action and producing a quarter-minute gun is not that tough to do. If you just take pains to line everything up correctly and don't overrush the job, you can turn out a really accurate rifle with not a lot of effort for a real machinist. It's not that tough.
And a lot of gunsmiths are machinists first, and then they get into guns, and then they become really good gunsmiths with that.
But you can get into the 1911 world that way real easy too by being a machinist. Long distance rifles, 1911s, made for it.
Absolutely.
All right. Left hand side, or my left, stage right. I don't know. Whatever. Yes, sir.
There you go.
All right, my question is, what do you recommend for like gunsmithing tools? Because I've kind of piecemealed my collection together. but I have problems with like my brass punches flaring out, and then it's hard to use them for what they're intended for, or like knocking out the gas pins if you want to change your gas block. Those bend and stuff. Is there like a higher grade of tool or brands you recommend that hold up better?
Yes, absolutely. The thing to remember with brass punches is that you're constantly going to be refacing those punches because that brass is going to move. So that for them to get flared out, that's completely normal. Don't stress over that. Just reface them. And whenever you just run out of punch, that's when you know it's time to buy a new one. And with steel punches, there's a company that makes steel punches. What's the name? Brownells. Yeah. Brownells is that, yeah. So, and not only that, but if you break those punches, we've got a pretty good guarantee. So send them back. We'll send you new punches. So that's punches are gonna break. You're gonna break punches all the time because some pins are a lot more stubborn than others. That's just part of it. But yeah, just stare it also makes really good punches. I like a lot of stare it punches. Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
But don't send a brass punch to do a steel punch's job either. Sometimes you just got to go steel on steel. And if you're careful, you won't mar the gun.
Now, were you wanting to know all kinds of basic tools you need to start off?
More like, I know like Real Avid is probably on the cheap end, but they make like a giant kit. Like I said, I've kind of piecemealed mine. I got Brownell's hammer. I just bought the from Brownell's the like Obsidian Arms like full punch kit and stuff. But yeah, I've already bent some of those off.
I would say too, starting off, a belt sander, something as simple as that. There's lots of things you don't think about, and when we put together our kit, we asked people like these guys, what should we have the students get when they graduate? Belt sander was one, tabletop grinder and buffer, a good vise, a good gun vise.
That's number one.
Yeah, if you mentioned Real Avid, they have a 360 gun vise, and if anybody's ever worked on an AR in a vise where you're having to get and torque in all kinds of weird angles, this vise will go any angle you want in 360 degrees. So that's good. A lead sled, not all the time, but you could use it for a lot of different things. Punches, of course. I mean,
Punches,
you're going to be using punches all the time.
A good screwdriver set, for sure.
And a hammer.
A hammer.
You need a hammer for everything.
A hammer.
One of those two-faced hammers actually with nylon and brass on it.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how handy that comes in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how much you can do with a brass hammer that you just assumed you needed steel for. Brass will do most of it.
Both legal and illegal.
Hey,
I know nothing. All right, next.
First off, I just want to say thank you for all of your how-tos and your build videos. Those are really awesome. Thank you. To piggyback off that question, I'd like to put it forward to the panel. What are the top 5 or so pieces of equipment that you need for a new enthusiast builder?
all right. So, vise, screwdriver set, hammer, punch set, and something else someone else is going to name.
You got to have a good sturdy bench. You got to be able to hold the work. Holding the work is half the battle a lot of times. If you're working on the kitchen table or a card table or in your lap, things go wrong in a hurry, and you wind up scratching the gun or whatever. But if you can vise it down on a sturdy table and actually work on it, you'd be surprised how easily things move, how much more efficient it becomes.
I want to see a show of hands.
Get some glasses that magnify.
Oh, that's a good idea, too.
Yeah.
Show of hands, how many people have actually worked on a gun in their lap?
But it was last week.
Yes. Funny story, there's a company out there that has build kits, and I won't mention their name, but they said to me, oh, you can build this firearm on the toilet in 30 minutes. I actually tried it.
Everything
Took me
come out
about
okay?
45 minutes, and my feet fell asleep, but it worked.
All right. This is, we're also, after this, thank our hemorrhoid cream sponsor. So.
I'm Peter. I'm from Illinois. I just want to say I loved your videos. They've helped me with a lot of things, especially cleaning an SKS, getting Cosmoline out of it, and putting the first time Glock parts kit together. I just want to know, what's your advice for someone who, I do want to get into gunsmithing. I want to work on stuff from 700s, ARs, AKs, stuff like that. But I also want to get into restoration. But with everything going on in Illinois right now, it's not the easiest to get my hands on stuff to actually work on. What would be your advice going in?
I'll start off.
Restoration.
Restoration.
It is tricky.
Yeah.
Don't start on an expensive gun.
Or anybody's family heirloom.
It
Right.
doesn't even have to be a firearm. Old, like, worn-out tools that are made of steel and wood, you can practice on those as well, because a lot of the concepts are the same. So it doesn't even have to be a firearm.
We
So-
could talk for 2 hours on how to use a file,
Yes.
and then graduate through the different files till you get to the sandpaper, and then working up from there.
But I think you're on the right track too, because in gunsmithing, especially nowadays in 2024, there are so many niches that you could get into. You could be the best checker in the Mid-South. You could be a great Cerakoter. You could be a restorer of antique firearms. If you find that niche and you're good at it, or niche, or niche, or however we're going to say it, niche, I like to say niche.
Niche it is.
And you get good at it, people will be coming to you from all over the country, and you could get booked out 2 to 3 years as the restoration guy.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people doing it anymore. Or if you can get a job with someone like Turnbull Restorations or something like that, you would learn a lot in 3 months, more than 2 years on your own.
Awesome. Thank you.
Where we at? Over here.
Hello, I'm Lee from Iowa, and I was wondering on your take on the myth, the gun is always more accurate than the shooter.
The
lot of
gun
times.
is often more accurate than the shooter, but not always. Not always. Trying to think of a good example here. There are some really poorly fitted 1911 barrels that are absolutely even worse than I can shoot.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the firearm. But yeah, that's an excellent question.
I have a younger guy, that if I want to know how accurate my gun is, I let him shoot it. If it's an open sight gun, because he can see it much better than I can. And most guns are, even from the factory, just from the factory. A lot of guns are much more accurate than what you can do with them. I'm talking about handguns now. Rifles, I don't know. With the optics now, you can find out pretty quickly if a rifle is shooting well or not, if you're using good ammo. It's not like the old days.
Are you talking from the perspective of a human shooting it every time, whether it's a good shooter or a bad shooter, or are you talking about the rifle in a device that's pulling the trigger and everything, and the rifle's more accurate than the shooter?
Just basically the general myth that you can never shoot a gun as accurately as it actually can be.
Right, yeah. Human error, it's a thing.
Right.
Consider that myth busted.
So first off, I'd like to say it's nice how approachable you guys were sitting out underneath the big tent. Thanks for answering a couple of questions there, and love the comedy relief. It's hard to tell who's mad at who sometimes for fake on the show. But my question is, I've got a 22-250 and a Remington 700 that I really like, 26-inch barrel. I just don't like the 22-250 anymore, and I can't find that rifle. Even looking back at older catalogs, it's a bull barrel, but it's not fluted. It's not, it's just a straight barrel. I'm wondering, how do you go about rebarreling that or having it done into a different caliber? Is there somebody that you send that out to? And with a 22-250, can I go 6.5 with it, or
You can certainly go 6.5 Creedmoor.
Okay, the projectile length isn't too long for that? No, okay.
No, the Creedmoor was designed to kind of go in that length action.
Okay.
For sure.
It's an H&S precision stock, and it's a great gun, but I do more now than the 22-250 can do. So how do you go about, is it better to recalibrate that or to try and find a barrel to put in that, because it'd look a little silly with a smaller barrel in that the cutout that's in the stock.
I mean, as far as easier, it's always going to be easier to source a new barrel. That's going to be the easiest route, but it's going to be more expensive a lot of times too. So
We've got some of the Schillen pre-threaded barrels in a heavy contour. I think we still carry some number 7s, don't we?
Yeah, I think so.
That's about as heavy as it gets with a taper of it all to it. And they're as accurate as anything out there.
Yeah, so I mean, anything that uses that bolt face diameter and that action length, your possibilities are endless as far as what caliber you can go to.
Okay, so and that's something. So I'd be better off just setting that barrel aside and then just finding a new barrel in the caliber I want and taking it to a gunsmith, because I don't want a gunsmith.
Yeah, because if you were gonna redo that as far as like using that same barrel, it's got to be 22 caliber. You got to do something because that's the bore diameter.
You can't rebore it.
I wouldn't recommend it.
No? Okay. No.
Yeah, you'd be better off just getting a new barrel at that point. So, yep.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
All right. Hey, I was wondering if there's a good network or a way to find somebody to take on special projects like rebarreling an old 1901 or changing the caliber on a British Enfield from World War II. How do you find the right person to do stuff like that?
There's several gunsmithing Facebook groups. Some of them, you kind of got to filter through them a little bit because, you know, you get a lot of, back to the myth that we're busting of what is a gunsmith. There's a lot of people out there that'll build ARs and they'll build a really good one, and then their buddies have them build one and they built 4 or 5 for other people and they're like, I'm a gunsmith. And you'll find a lot of those groups where it's a bunch of people like that. But there are some historical weapons gunsmithing Facebook groups that you can search and join those. And the good ones I've found are the ones that have like 5 to 10 questions that you have to answer to even join the group. Yeah. And those are the ones that you're going to feel a little more safer in. What about you guys? Anybody?
Yeah, that was
but I'll warn you, it's not cheap to work on military stuff anymore like it used to be. Sometimes, if you want a sporter especially, it's cheaper to buy a Remington than it is to sporterize a Mauser a lot of times. And that's just the way it is these days. Labor costs more.
All right.
But there are definitely still people that do it, so
yeah.
It can be done.
Okay. Thanks.
And I know his collection, and he's got some good ones.
Yeah, I'm just starting to get into bolt action builds, and I was wondering if you could compare and contrast 2 lugs versus 3 lug bolts.
What was the question again?
2 lug versus 3 lug bolts.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
we're both looking at you.
The 3-lug system is easier to manufacture from that point of view. I mean, it's the lugs are normally the same diameter as the bolt body, so most of the receivers bored straight through and reamed to that diameter. It also gives you a shorter bolt lift if you like that. However, if you've been shooting like converted 98 Mausers and stuff all your life like me, it feels a little funny when you're trying to raise that bolt up those extra 15, 20 degrees. I never do get used to the short bolt, like an A bolt, you know. I never get used to those for some reason.
Yeah, and you know, you'll also hear the argument that 3 lugs are better than 2 for, you know, actually action strength, but for most calibers that we're shooting, you're never really going to notice a difference in wear or anything like that.
No, and you got to remember the Mauser, only 2 lugs, is made out of soft steel. They're surface hardened, but they're not hardened on the inside. They're strong by design. So you can shoot 2 million of 8mm Mauser rounds through one, and they seem to just keep on going.
Over here.
Yeah, I was just wondering, how do you guys go about deciding on what myth you're going to talk about in a video for any given day?
Yeah, no problem.
Well, that's just easy. I sit down and I wait for Caleb to announce what it is.
Yeah, so most of the time, Steve, I say most of the time, a lot of the time, Steve doesn't even know what the myth is going to be. It's just, you know, I'll jump into some comments on YouTube, or I'll check out Reddit or Facebook or one of the other like terrible places in this world, and see what people are talking about and go from there. And of course, a lot of our videos, not just Smythbusters, but a lot of the content we make is user requested. So if somebody wants to know how to do something, that's a big driving force behind what we actually do.
Yeah, we like it crowdsourced, really, because we want it to be relevant.
Yeah, and honestly, for the most part, I don't even care how many views a video is going to get. If it's helping somebody do something, that's what we're here for. So, like I said, we don't monetize, so we're not trying to make as much money as we can on YouTube. We're just trying to help people and put out good educational content.
Yeah, it's nice not having that kind of pressure. It really is.
And for a second there, I thought John was starting to dance for us, but he was telling us to wrap it up. So
yeah. So with that being said, I'll wrap it up a little bit here, then I'll pass it on to Steve to close. But the whole point of this is don't get hung up on titles. As far as like gunsmith goes, yeah, a gunsmith is great. You may have somebody that came out of a gunsmithing school and has been gunsmithing for 4 years, and they, for whatever reason, they have a title of master gunsmith. I would rather take my gun to the guy that's been gunsmithing for 20 plus years and just calls himself a gunsmith, right? So don't get caught up on titles. The wonderful thing about the internet now is that we can check reviews of places, right? And see how good people are doing see what people are doing to their customers and go from there. So.
All right. Well, on behalf of Zeke, Caleb, and myself, I want to thank you all for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next year with another episode of Smythbusters.